a big hormone is cortisol that plays with thyroid. So cortisol and thyroid just play off of each other. And this is one of the biggest problems I see with patients is they're just chronically stressed. Their adrenals are stressed. And not only is it affecting their weight and their other hormones, especially women like progesterone, it's also affecting their thyroid and their thyroid hormone and how it is the feedback in the pituitary gland. So with stress and cortisol, that is something that we just have to keep it in check. It's affecting not only our thyroid, but our other sex hormones and weight gain. So it's just this vicious cycle with cortisol, blood sugar, and all of that. We need to really focus on that. And, prayer, meditation, exercise, all of these things can really help your thyroid because you're modulating that pathway with the adrenals.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today I've got a great guest coming on. We talk all about thyroid health, how to figure out if you've got some thyroid issues. If so, how to test for it, how to figure it out, what to do. We talk about gut health. We discuss how to balance blood sugar levels, how to get cortisol in check. So you are going to learn a lot. The guest on the show today is Dr. Jen Flegger. She is double board certified physician in emergency integrative medicine. She went to medical school at Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, completed her training at St. Vincent's Mercy Hospital, and did her fellowship at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. Dr. Jen brings more than just expertise to the table. She co-authored Eat, Sleep, Move, Breathe, A Guide to Living a Healthier Life, and serves on the board of the Invisible Disabilities Association. She's also vice president of the Northwest Ohio Osteopathic Association and is part of the American Osteopathic Association Bureau of Osteopathic Research and Public Health. Her passion for healing just isn't professional, it's also personal. After being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, Dr. Jen dove deep into the world of autoimmune conditions, hormonal imbalances, and thyroid health. Now she's on a mission to guide others toward better health, both in Ohio and virtually. Dr. Jen, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful that you're here today.
Thank you. So nice to see you, Dr. Ashley.
Yeah. You're such an expert in what you focus on. I want to dive right into thyroid health, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'd love for you to share the role of thyroid in weight management and specifically, what might be some symptoms of thyroid issues that people should be looking out for.
Hey, really quickly, if you're interested in hydrating yourself optimally and want to do it in an efficient and effective way, I created an Electrolyte Plus mix just for that. It's called Dr. Ashley's Electrolyte Plus Creative, I know. And it's crafted with essential electrolytes, vitamins, and minerals for maximum absorption. With patented forms of zinc and vitamin C, it supports immune and adrenal function. Plus, chromium picolinate regulates healthy blood sugar levels while helping to curb those cravings. Say goodbye to headaches and fatigue. Visit drashleywellness.com and use code Ashley10 for 10% off your first purchase or 20% off your first subscription order with free shipping. Plus, enjoy 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, back to the episode.
Yes, absolutely. And we see a lot of overlap with thyroid and other problems going on. But thyroid, we think of feeling cold, and this is low or hypothyroidism, so low functioning thyroid. Mm-hmm. So we look at being cold, hair loss, weight gain, slow heart rate. If you're a younger woman, it could be menstrual abnormalities. Constipation is big. So say you're just always regular and then you start getting a little constipated. So when we have these symptoms of low functioning thyroid, we want to get a full thyroid panel. And this is where it gets controversial. So you go into your doctor and they might just run a screening TSH or thyroid stimulating hormone. And that's not really enough. It doesn't tell us the full story. And it would be like going to a movie and just watching the middle of the movie and you miss the beginning and the end. You'll be very confused. So if we get a full thyroid panel, that is going to give us more of the story. And what that would include is a thyroid stimulating hormone, a TSH, a free T4, which a lot of the times that's included. But then we also want a free T3 and a reverse T3. And sometimes we also want to dig in and get antibodies tested. So thyroid antibodies and TPO antibodies, and then a vitamin D level is also really helpful. So why do we need all of these labs? Why is a TSH not enough? Because you have T4 over here and you have T3. T4 is what the thyroid makes. About 80% of what the thyroid puts out is T4, but it is an inactive thyroid hormone. It needs to convert to T3. T3 is the active thyroid hormone. And this is what is actually going to bind to the receptors and actually turn on the processes that we need that the thyroid does, like affects our hair, affects our metabolism, our heart rate, our gut health, and the motility. So if we have a bunch of T4, but we're not converting to T3, we have a conversion problem, which could be for many reasons. It could be to stress, it could be to mineral and vitamin deficiencies. Then we aren't looking at the whole picture. You might have a good amount of T4, but you're not converting to the active thyroid hormone. So you're stuck with your labs looking perfect or really good, only the TSH and free T4, but you're still having these hypothyroid symptoms. And I see this a lot. People come in and they're super frustrated because they're like, I just want to make sure it's not my thyroid that's causing this weight gain, or maybe they're having a stall in their weight loss. And we really want to make sure that we are focusing on the thyroid because it's a part of our metabolism, plays such an important role.
Mm-hmm. Why is vitamin D so important?
So vitamin D is one of those factors that helps with thyroid production. So if we have really tanked vitamin D, which is very common in Northwest Ohio, where I currently live, then we're not going to get to the real optimal thyroid levels. And also vitamin D, it's a pro-hormone. It helps with inflammation. So it's part of the big picture. I always want my thyroid patients to have optimal vitamin D. And sometimes if we just fix the vitamin D, if we just give them the cofactors they need, like zinc, selenium, then they'll convert better, they'll make more thyroid hormone, and they won't need to be put on medication.
What specific medications do you use? Is it like NP thyroid, Synthroid? What are the differences between the two? And is there some that are better than others that we should be looking out for?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So say you go to your doctor, you've worked on all the conversion issues, you've worked on your adrenal health, all the things, and you need a prescription. Okay. And it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. So our thyroid can become damaged from environmental toxins. It's an endocrine organ that is very sensitive to different environmental toxins. Iodine is needed for the thyroid to function properly. That's how T4 and T3, you take away an iodine and that becomes the active thyroid hormone. And all of these receptors can be blocked by chlorine, bromine found in certain breads at restaurants. So it's an organ that is very environmental sensitive. So sometimes when we beat on something a lot, especially like an organ, it can lose function. So sometimes as we age and we just have all that stress on our thyroid, sometimes it can lose some of the functions. So sometimes you will need a little bit of extra support if you want to get to those optimal levels. So I tell my patients it's not the end of the world. I personally had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune cause of thyroid disease. And it's actually the number one cause of hypothyroidism in women, because women really, when they're diagnosed with hypothyroidism, it's usually the root cause is Hashimoto's. So I had to have some of my thyroid removed. There was concern about a nodule that was possibly cancerous. So I have to be on thyroid medicine for the rest of my life. My thyroid was damaged by this autoimmune disease. And when I see patients that have an autoimmune thyroid disease, I'm like, okay, let's minimize the damage. Let's get the inflammation down, heal the gut, fix the root cause. So then maybe they won't have to be on medication. But I'll get patients that come to me and that damage has been done. So it's like, okay, now it's time to optimize however we can and start some medications. So we look at the numbers. We look at how they're converting T4 to T3. We do keep in mind when we're prescribing that the thyroid puts out 80% of T4, 20% T3 approximately. So why are we only giving Synthroid or levothyroxine or T4? I have no idea, because if you have a conversion issue and you can't convert T4 to T3 and you're not getting any out of the T3 from your thyroid, you could run into problems where, once again, the labs look good, but you feel sluggish. So it really depends on the person. I do have patients that I just put them on a T4 and they do great. They have great conversion. They feel good. My levothyroxine, my T4 of choice is Tirosint. So Tirosint is a capsule and it doesn't have a bunch of additives in it. When we look at Synthroid, it has additives in it. It has food dye in it. I was on Synthroid for a long time, but some of these generic Synthroids or levothyroxine can even have gluten in it. So if you're living a gluten-free lifestyle, you have to look at all these fillers. So that's really frustrating. I also love NP Thyroid, Armor, all of these desiccated thyroid hormones. And they're nice. They give a good ratio of T4 to T3 because it's from pig thyroid. It's desiccated pig thyroid, little bit higher T3 than T4. Okay. So sometimes you have to be careful because you don't want too much T3 that could cause, breakdown of the bone, rapid heart rate. We want to really look at those numbers and be checking every approximately 6 to 8 weeks if we're doing a medication change. So I like NP thyroid because it's desiccated. You also get a little bit of T2 in it, which has been getting a lot of buzz lately in the weight loss scene. So when we look at thyroid hormones, especially weight loss, T3 is the active thyroid hormone. You definitely want that to be optimal. So you are getting, good fat burning, good metabolism. Make sure if your doctor is prescribing just a T4 or you're on a T4 and you have never even looked at your free T3 levels, that would definitely be something you want to ask for on the next lab draw. So you can get the full story, that full movie, the full plot twist of your thyroid.
Yeah, that's great information. So you cut out just a little bit. How frequently should we be getting our thyroid tested if we're on medication or supplements for it? And then also, how do we run the test? So do we run it before we take the medication? Do we take the medication and then get the blood test like 3 to 4 hours after we've taken? What's the best way to get it tested and how frequently should we be testing?
Yes, of course. So pregnant mothers, we check every month, right? That's something that I've had to do all my pregnancies. But usually it's about 6 to 8 weeks for a medication change. I like more 8 weeks. It gives the thyroid time to like reset the adrenals. You get kind of a better picture, but 6 weeks at least, wait 6 weeks with a medication change, because otherwise you're just not going to be seeing the full effect on the thyroid stimulating hormone. So that's really good, especially if there's a medication change. Sometimes if I have Graves patients or really sick autoimmune patients, I'll just like get it every 4 weeks for a couple months until we see what's going on. And then lab timing, just be consistent with it. It's the opinions for this is all over the place. It's really kind of difficult. T4 is longer acting. So say you take a T4, that's a levothyroxine, Synthroid, Tirosint, and the half-life of that is a lot longer. T3 or Cytomel and P thyroid, the half-life is shorter. So sometimes when my patients are on those, I just keep in mind like, okay, they're on this, they're always getting it, in the morning before they take their medication. Some patients will take their medications and then go in to get their lab work. The sweet spot, I would say, is either fasting in the morning or in the afternoon. So you're taking your meds and then you're waiting about 6 hours. But the problem I run into is a lot of the lab draws that I'm doing for my patients are fasting to look at their insulin and glucose. So then I just tell them to wait to take their thyroid meds. And you can look as the T3, if you take it, it goes right in your bloodstream and it's going to have a shorter half-life. Okay. And some people get compounded thyroid medications where they have like sustained release of the T4. So they're all different, and it makes sense because T4 is that active thyroid hormone. T4 goes to T3, T3 binds, and if it's not binding, it's getting absorbed, it's getting recycled. So it kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, it is, but so many patients are empowered with asking for the full thyroid panel. And once you do that and see and track your numbers and really get, the T4, the T3, the reverse T3, it makes more sense and you can get good at it. And that's what I really recommend to patients is if you have something going on with your body, you need to be empowered and learn a little bit about it from, people like Dr. Ashley and I. We love to teach because we want you to be empowered, because conventional medicine is not a perfect place right now. It's actually gone downhill a lot in the last decade. And it's sad for me because I don't think people are getting good care. So I'm passionate about empowering you to know more about what's going on in your body, because we know the person that knows the most about their body is the patient. It's the one living inside their body. So I really love teaching. One thing I want to go over is reverse T3. So reverse T3 is really interesting. All the endocrine societies, they kind of poo-poo it. They're starting to talk about it more. It's in research, but still they don't like to order it. They really get angry about it. And it's such an important marker. So reverse T3, we really see this elevated in patients when they're stressed. So it would be something, a lot of the studies, they'll draw reverse T3 after a patient was in surgery or in trauma or had sepsis or an infection or something, and it's really high. So what that means, reverse T3 is an inactive form of T3. It's kind of like a mirrored image. So it doesn't stick to those receptors. It sticks there, but it doesn't turn the key. Okay. So it's sitting there, like, those keys that you can put them in the lock, but they don't turn. And you're like, I thought this was the right key, but it won't unlock the door. So reverse T3 run into that problem. If you have a lot of high stress, cortisol, adrenal stuff going on, your body thinks it's in fight or flight. It's running from a bear. Oh my gosh, there's something really dangerous going on. I need to hoard all my T3 and put it in this safe spot as reverse T3, but it's not helping your metabolism. It's not doing anything. You're kind of stuck. And we can also see this with a lot of T4. Your body's like, okay, I can't convert it. I'm just going to save it to reverse T3. So sometimes that can be a problem too. And once again, if you're feeling stuck with your thyroid health, you need to look at reverse T3, because sometimes that can just mess things up and you're just not feeling optimal then.
What is the optimal range for reverse T3?
Yes, I like to see it 12 or less in patients. And we also don't want it 0, right? We want that good balance. But if it gets higher than 12, I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Are you more stressed than lately? Have you, had a life event? Something's going on. And we need to try to bring that down in that better range.
If someone has thyroid imbalance, how does it impact other hormones? And what would be some approaches people could achieve to find better hormone balance?
Yes. So when our thyroid is really imbalanced, it can also affect our other hormones. It can affect estrogen because of thyroid binding globulin. So if we have our thyroid levels not correct, it can also go downstream and affect that estrogen, because more estrogen will be bound up. We see this a lot with birth control. So birth control pills can have an effect on the thyroid binding globulin and sex hormone binding globulin. So both of those, it can bind up more hormones and the thyroid hormone. And this is why when someone becomes pregnant, right after that first missed period, they're supposed to increase their thyroid medication, because more thyroid is being bound up and we need to make sure that they have good levels for the baby. A big hormone is cortisol that plays with thyroid. So cortisol and thyroid just play off of each other. And this is one of the biggest problems I see with patients is they're just chronically stressed. Their adrenals are stressed. And not only is it affecting their weight and their other hormones, especially women like progesterone, it's also affecting their thyroid and their thyroid hormone and how it is, the feedback in the pituitary gland. So with stress and cortisol, that is something that we just have to keep it in check. It's affecting not only our thyroid, but our other sex hormones and weight gain. So it's just this vicious cycle with cortisol, blood sugar, and all of that. We need to really focus on that and, prayer, meditation, exercise, all of these things can really help your thyroid because you're modulating that pathway with the adrenals.
So if someone has Hashimoto's or some kind of autoimmune thyroid condition, what is some practical advice? Like, what are the top 3 things people should do to help support that situation?
Yes. So the first, if you have lower functioning thyroid, the first thing I would do is run antibody tests and make sure, and also get an ultrasound. So if you're diagnosed with Hashimoto's, we need to look at the root cause. God did not create our body just to get autoimmune diseases for no reason, and they're running rampant right now. The big thing we need to do is look at gut health. Usually there's leaky gut, and leaky gut is when our intestine becomes leaky. We have these tight junctions that keeps everything together and just opens a little bit to let nutrients in. But when this gets damaged, it becomes leaky, and then things pass through. The body gets confused when it sees things that shouldn't be in there in the bloodstream and creates antibodies to this. And I've seen it so much. If we fix the gut health, we can drive down those antibodies and heal the thyroid and actually reverse Hashimoto's. And that's what happened with me once I fixed my gut health.
Really?
I was able to reverse my Hashimoto's, and my antibodies have been 0 for like over a decade now. The concern also with Hashimoto's is, especially women, if you're diagnosed with one autoimmune disease, you're more likely to be diagnosed with another autoimmune disease, Hashimoto. So what's next? Lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. It's kind of scary because when we're not looking at the root cause, then we can't prevent other diseases. And autoimmune diseases, that's a state of inflammation. Your body is inflamed. Your immune system is in balance. What other diseases come from immune imbalance? Well, cancers. So not just autoimmune disease, but cancer is a dysregulation of our immune system also. So we really have to look at the root causes. Gut health. Very common root cause for gut health. It could be a dysbiosis or infection in the gut, like an imbalance of the good and the bad guys. And what I tell my patients is, so say you have like a city and there are a few bad guys in there, right? Well, no problems because you have good citizens in there, watching the neighborhood. You have the police making sure the bad guys aren't going to do anything bad. But say we have a couple gangs come into the city. Well, it gets a little out of control, right? You can't really control that as well. They're doing damage. They're, breaking into things. And the good guys are the people and the cops. They're trying to control them, but they're out of control, right? And it's this overgrowth of bad guys in our gut that starts to cause inflammation, leaky gut, leading to autoimmune problems. And the sad thing is, we see a lot, like, I don't know about you, but like, how many times do we watch social media reels and people are like, oh, I start out the day, my stomach flat, and by the end I'm bloated and I look pregnant. And they try to normalize this, right? That's not normal. That's your body saying help, right? Bloating, stomach cramping, constipation, diarrhea. Those are symptoms. Those are, thank you. Our body gives us symptoms that something is off, and we shouldn't be pushing that away. We shouldn't be taking over-the-counter medications for that. We shouldn't be normalizing it. We should figure out what's going on and heal that. So one example is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. So these methane and sulfur producing bacteria in there, they creep up in the small intestine where they shouldn't be, and they cause ruckus. They cause bloating. It's almost like a frat house with just a bunch of party animals drinking beer. They're fermenting all these sugars. Okay, so you can do a low FODMAP diet. You could change your diet and stuff, and that might help a little bit and temporize it. Sometimes the good guys can overcome that, but sometimes you need botanicals. Sometimes you need rifaximin. You need an antibiotic, and you just need to get the bad guys out, right? So I had SIBO. I had to get the bad guys out, and botanicals worked. And another big thing, I also, mold and candida. I had some of that, and I have so many patients that have mold overgrowth and candida or yeast overgrowth in the gut. And those symptoms, it could just be like, I crave sugar. Like, I can't eat dinner and not have something sweet after. It's been so subtle like that. And I see a lot of mold, a lot of candida overgrowth in the Midwest where I'm at, because we have a lot of spraying of farm fields with Roundup or glyphosate. And that just like kind of shoots holes in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of gut dysbiosis around in the Midwest. What else can cause gut dysbiosis? Stress. So back to stress. This is why
Mm-hmm.
in the hospitals, they actually put patients on a protein pump inhibitor, which I'm not a fan of, but they do it for stress prophylaxis, because we know that patients in the hospital that are hospitalized, their body's under stress, they're more likely to get an ulcer. And we don't want patients bleeding out, right, in the hospital from a stomach ulcer. If I were in charge of all the hospitals, there's botanicals that would work better and not have negative side effects. Parasites is another thing. Speaking of PPI, so protein pump inhibitors that are over the counter, which if you dig into protein pump inhibitors, they are not FDA approved for long-term use, and they're over the counter, and conventional doctors put patients on these long-term. So they're actually not indicated for long-term use. They're just used to treat ulcers or short-term gastritis. So we have patients on these all the time, and we are altering the acidity of our stomach. So protein pump inhibitors, they make the stomach less acidic, right? Because if you're less acidic, you're not going to have reflux and stuff. Well, we're changing the environment of our stomach that God made like perfect, because when we're eating things and being exposed to parasites in our food that's shipped from Mexico or wherever, that they die in our stomach acid, right? Now, if we're altering that, sometimes we can get more exposure to things, have increased risk of SIBO, candida overgrowth, parasites if you're on a protein pump inhibitor. So many things can go wrong, but it's also so many things can go right through diet, botanicals. So don't stress about gut health. But if this is sounding like something's off with my gut, you should make it a priority to have good gut health. Hippocrates' quote, all disease begins in the gut. So really focusing on gut health. It's like I tell my patients, it's not just a one and done. You fix the dysbiosis, you're done. You should be continually assessing your gut health and making sure it's healthy, because we don't want to have any disease come from it. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. That was great. Thank you, Dr. Jen. Yeah. So I want to hear from you on how we assess our gut health. I have heard that and understand that if we have an ulcer, it's likely coming from H. pylori. Generally, we take a PPI if we have those ulcer symptoms, and then that can allow the acidity to decrease. Therefore, H. pylori even increases more, and we get stuck in this cascade of events. So if someone is feeling like they're bloated, they have gut health issues, or gut pain, ulcer-like activity, is it a stool sample like a GI effects or GI map test that they should be getting done? What do you think is the gold standard there at this point?
Yes, absolutely. If I have patients and money is an issue, sometimes we can treat based on symptoms, and it's not really going to do harm if we're using some botanicals to kind of rebalance everything. But I love GI effects and H. pylori, you can add that on. Insurance covers H. pylori blood testing too. You can test that. But yeah, H. pylori, more of that reflux like symptom, some bloating too, but more like reflux. If they have reflux, I definitely get H. pylori. And it can be very stubborn. H. pylori can be. And you also want to treat members of the household, because I have this one patient, her husband just won't get treated for it, and he keeps just passing it back to her. And I'm like maybe she'll convince him soon, but that can be a problem. So so botanicals like mastic gum, that can really help with H. pylori. And then if that doesn't work, it's stubborn. Sometimes I will do more of the conventional. There's like a new potassium pump one out that actually really helped a stubborn case. So lots of cool different things out there to treat that. But yeah, I love GI effects. So it's kind of gross. Patients have said it's like the grossest thing they've ever done, because you poop, and I've done it. You poop in like a French fry tray. So you poop in the French fry tray, and then you have to like mix your stool like in the cup. And, it's gross, but like we should all be looking at our stool anyway. You should know what your stool looks
Mhm.
like. Is it little turds? Is it diarrhea? Or is it a nice, smooth log that you don't have to wipe? And it shouldn't smell bad either. That bothers my husband when I'm like, yeah, my poop doesn't really smell. Like yours shouldn't really smell either. And he's like, that's not true. And I'm like, I mean, you shouldn't be, and like farting, like bad farting. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're passing gas and it stinks like someone's dying, like that's not normal either. There's dysbiosis in there.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny because I think about when I had all my Hashimoto's when it was diagnosed, and I did have like foul gas, and I barely pass gas now, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, what do they call it when silent but deadly? Like that means that something's wrong in your gut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I have 3 boys, so they talk about poop and farts a lot. But I encourage it. I'm like, yes,
Mhm.
we should be talking about this. So the stool testing is great.
Mhm.
There is some coverage for the GI effects for those listening over 65. Medicare will reimburse that with the right ICD-10 code. So that's very nice. Just the add-ons they have to pay. I have used that with patients. I'm like, great, this is covered. And it helps so much. I remember one of my patients that was suffering from cancer, and it was cancer and in the colon, and we did a GI effects on him, and it like changed his life because we treated SIBO,
Yeah.
and he had low short chain fatty acids, which is basically what feeds the good gut health. And it's hard because this is coming from his oncologist was at the Cleveland Clinic telling him to eat canned vegetables because they're only eat canned vegetables and processed food because it's easier to digest. And I'm like, no, you can eat real food that's going to help battle your
Yeah.
cancer. You just need digestive enzymes because when we checked, his digestive enzymes were so low. So it's
Mhm.
great because it can give you, like, we're all
Mhm.
individuals, and conventional medicine kind of looks at us as a diagnosis. But if you dig deeper into, this is more personalized medicine, you can just personalize it towards you because we're all different. So we shouldn't all be treated the exact same.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. So we talked about how to look and do a deep dive into thyroid. We talked about gut health. I think another important foundation is having stable blood sugar. And I would love for you to speak about maybe some practical strategies that we can implement to start balancing blood sugar. I know you speak to the carnivore diet a bit. I'd love to hear your perspective on that for helping to stabilize blood sugar and cortisol balance, and then maybe some potential challenges that we go through if we do adopt a diet like that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the first thing I love for balancing blood sugar is data and information about your own body. So I love continuous glucose monitors. Such a good tool. You can get a prescription from them. Some of them are over the counter now. You can track what you're eating, what you're doing, and it's so helpful. I mean, it's life-changing. And my women patients, if you're still cycling or menstruating, I have them wear it for the full 4 weeks because your blood sugar, yes, it does change with your hormones. Now, men and postmenopausal women, just 2 weeks even. I just say give it a try for 2 weeks and let's collect data. And even that is enough time to put together the pieces of, wow, if I drink a glass of orange juice, it spikes my blood sugar like, choo. Then you're on a roller coaster the rest of the day with your blood sugar. Oh, but if I eat an orange, it goes up, but it's not as big of a spike. Like I had a male patient tell me that we were getting him off of his type 2 diabetes medications. And he was like, I will never drink juice again. It's just not worth it. Right. Because he's trying to get to metabolic freedom and metabolic flexibility, which should be all of our goal. So, what do you want your blood sugar to do? You don't want it to go up and down and spike up and down. If you have big glucose spikes, you have big insulin spikes, and insulin is going to tell your body, hey, let's store fat. Okay. So we don't want that. We want our insulin levels to be slow and steady too. And eventually, they're going to have a continuous insulin monitor, which I'm like, that would be so cool. So these are things that are coming down the pipeline, which would be really helpful too, because I don't think people understand insulin is really the problem. Yeah, we like blood sugar and to look at fasting blood sugar, but I love to look at fasting insulin. So you want it to be smooth and steady throughout the day, right? The goal is just be rolling hills, not big mountains. Another lab work that you can get. So say you can't have a continuous glucose monitor, you can ask for a fasting glucose and insulin, and you can calculate a HOMA IR score. So you use that calculation to see if you're insulin sensitive, insulin resistant, or very insulin resistant, close to diabetes. And this is so helpful when I'm talking to patients about what are we going to do next? Are you basically diabetic and we need to do metformin for a little bit until you get your diet under control and do some other tips I'll talk about? Or can we do some berberine, or could we just do diet and a continuous glucose monitor? So these are things that it's very important, because you just don't become diabetic overnight. It's not like this magic switch where your hemoglobin A1C is at the diabetes level and your doctor's like, okay, here it is. No, we have years and years to prevent this. And what's really sad is I'm seeing insulin resistance in younger and younger women. And everyone has PCOS now, which is basically insulin resistance. So, I blame all of the influencers getting their 90 grams of sugar Starbucks and all of this nonsense. So it's hard to watch. It's hard to see these people coming in. So what are some tips? These are tips that everyone should do, because every day we age, we get more insulin resistant. Sorry. It's just part of aging, but we can do things to help slow that and reverse it. So the first is keeping a stable blood sugar. What else helps with insulin resistance? Well, lifting weights and getting lean muscle mass. So muscle is such an important organ. It's a longevity organ. We know that we lose muscle as we age. So if you're over the age of 40, you could lose up to 1% to 2% of your muscle mass a year. So we need to combat that. Which goes along with resistance training is eating protein. So protein is also important. If you feel like you can't get enough protein in your diet, then you could take some amino acids. So amino acids, taking them during a workout or after a workout will give those building blocks to the muscle. So when the muscle breaks down, when you're lifting and is repairing, you have those amino acids. And protein keeps us full. It supports our metabolism. And also pairing protein with fat is going to give you really stable blood sugar. So if you are playing around with your continuous glucose monitor, if you eat fats and proteins first and then have dessert, you're not going to get a big spike. But say you just eat a cookie out of nowhere and don't eat fat or protein with that, you're going to spike high. And reducing that spike is what's going to help you stay insulin sensitive. Another tip is say you do have that cake and ice cream at your kid's birthday party or grandkid's birthday party, take a walk after, clean the house, dance, play with your kids, all of that. And that will help take that glucose that's floating around the bloodstream and drive it into the muscle. Okay. So that really helps, because we're all not going to eat perfectly all the time. I like to be realistic, so we can do those things to help. Apple cider vinegar, you could take 2 teaspoons before a meal. That has studies showing that blunts that insulin response. So little tips like that, or you could take capsules. Don't do the gummies because they usually have sugar in them, so that kind of negates that. Even though it seems cute, it will still help with digestion.
Defeats the purpose.
I know. I'm like, and I get it. I have some that my kids, they like how they taste. I'm like, well, it's going to help support digestion. So that's fine. And then when we talk about diet, so I alluded to protein and fat being helpful. So the carnivore diet, it gets a lot of attention right now. And I lean more towards animal based. So carnivore diet, really good if you do have something wrong with the gut health, right? It's going to reset the gut health because you're starving the gut of short chain fatty acids. So you can reset that gut. There are some studies showing that it does help change or repopulate in a different way the gut microbiome. So I will prescribe this for patients for like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes a little longer. And then I encourage more of an animal based where, yes, they can have like some spaghetti squash or cucumbers and, different, like some fruit. So honey, like adding different things in. I do like the carnivore. Like I had a patient recently that very bad, anxiety, like depression, and was eating just like lots of processed food. And I'm like, I want you on the carnivore diet for 4 weeks because he was committed. He wanted to be off his meds quickly. And he's coming off his meds and it's changing how he feels. So I think it is really good short term.
Mm-hmm.
I think how to sustain that long term, making it more animal based, a little bit more lenient is good. It also depends on your personality and how well you do with food. If you're restricted to just the carnivore diet, are you going to then like binge because you feel like you're restricting your body? So we don't want that either. We want it to be a healthy relationship with food. But what I've found personally and from patients, when they're on an animal-based diet or carnivore and they're eating more fats, healthy fats, they're more satisfied. So their cravings for sugar and processed food and carbs really goes down. And if we go back to like the science of that, you're keeping a really steady blood glucose. So you're not having those ups and downs, because when we're having those big spikes and then we're crashing, so your blood sugar goes up, your pancreas is like, oh my gosh, it's so high all of a sudden because you eat like, a big cookie or candy bar, right? And it's like, it's so high, I have to like release a lot. So it overshoots that insulin. So then what happens is your blood sugar drops, right? It's like you're on like a nasty roller coaster. It's too much dip. So when we do more carnivore diet, you're not having those dips. So you're not having those cravings. Like those Snickers commercials, the hangry.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my kids, I'm like, that shouldn't happen. Like
Yeah,
that's feeding the hangry.
that's right.
It's like a roller coaster. And that's what, unfortunately, the big food, they want that because, they get in our heads. You're like, oh, I need more energy. I'm going to go get a latte, with 20 grams or even more of sugar in there, but you're on that roller coaster. So you're going to feel you have more energy when you're eating animal-based or carnivore, playing a role, looking at fasting and stuff. But I would recommend a continuous glucose monitor, because I had a patient, she came to me, she was like, I'm intermittent fasting and I gained 5 pounds. So we looked and she was spiking in the morning from stress. So we we put her on 3 salt, like meals a day with protein and fat. And then she was steady. So some people, it's a negative stress when they're fasting too much. So you have to be careful, and we're all different.
Yep, I agree with that. That's great. Yeah. And when we're on this roller coaster of blood sugar highs and lows, it causes stress. And then like we get back into the elevated cortisol, which impacts thyroid and adrenal health. And it's this continuous cascade. So getting our blood sugar levels stabilized and reducing inflammation can help with all of these other situations we might be experiencing. So Dr. Jen, for someone who's just beginning their journey, managing their thyroid health, finding hormonal balance, what would you say to summarize? What would be the 3 most simple changes they can start with today to make impact on those aspects of their health?
Yes, absolutely. So food is medicine. So I would start with what you put in your mouth. And I would also, number 2, just really cultivate a routine where you're working on your stress. So make sure you are, praying, meditating, doing breath work every day. And also with that, lead with a heart of gratitude. Because when you're looking around, you're happy or grateful for everything, it's hard to be sad or be like grumpy, just fight through it and with gratitude. And then the 3rd thing would be lift weights. So go out there and lift weights, everyone.
Yeah, that's right. I love that. Dr. Jen, will you share where people can learn more about you, get more information? You have a great book. Will you share that with us?
Yes, absolutely. So I have a book I co-authored called Eat, Sleep, Move, Breathe, A Beginner's Guide to a Healthy Lifestyle. So really basic. So if you're just starting out on some of these, you're like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. So it just goes through the 4 pillars of health. I'm pretty active on Instagram. So it's Integrative Dr. Mom, Integrative DRMOM. I also have a YouTube, Integrative Dr. Mom, and then my website where I have protocols on gut health, some meal plans, and just a blog, and all that is healthybydrjen.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing just all of this amazing expertise. I know that I learned a lot, and everyone else will have too. So thank you so much, Dr. Jen.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
All right, you guys, I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. I hope that you got some action steps around your thyroid health, gut health, around balancing blood glucose, blood sugar levels, how to decrease cortisol. If you have any questions at all, any comments, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please drop your comments below in the comments section. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave a review. And remember, you guys, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. I'll see you next time.